Howdy, everybody. My name is Christy McKinley, and I serve as the National Conservation Desktop Team Lead on the Conservation Planning Branch. Before we get started, we're going to do a little housekeeping. This is a Teams live event, and it allows us to share just a one-way video and audio with you. If you would like to turn on your closed captions, you can do that by selecting Captions, Subtitles On in your video controls. If you need to pause the meeting, click the pause button found in the lower left corner of your screen. You can then click the button again to play from where you left off or jump to real time by clicking live, which is located next to the play button. And finally, we are recording this session in case you experience any technical difficulties. And for any employees and staff that are unable to attend today's event, the recording will be sent out later. You may access the recording after the conclusion of the event by clicking the same link you used to join us today. Now let's move forward on today's forum. The CD CART Forum is a three-part series open to everyone to learn more about CD and CART. The purpose is to share information and get feedback on how to improve our planning tools. You may see things that are new or different than how you have been trained. If you have questions, please reach out to your local business tools or technology specialist. The lack of ability to create customized maps and the time it takes to generate those maps in desktop are the biggest pain points we hear from our field staff. The goal of today is to share map tips and tricks to create maps in desktop without spending a lot of time. We know there are more mapping needs that cannot be done online, and therefore we're happy to announce we're looking at the ability to export state map templates from desktop into ArcGIS Desktop, so you'll have the full ability to customize maps in the future. Now I would like to turn it over to Deputy Chief for Programs, Karen Woodrich.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Christy mentioned, I'm Karen Woodrich, Deputy Chief for Programs. Super excited that we're kicking off this forum here this afternoon. Again, it's because we're hearing from you, right? We're hearing some of the struggles, some of the issues, some of the concerns that are going on, not only with CD CART, right, but in general, the bandwidth issues, the outages, the processes, the duplicative efforts that you're having to go through. And we know it's frustrating. It's frustrating on our end as well in trying to either diagnose it or code it or, just get it right. And we know that time is of the essence, especially with Inflation Reduction Act things happening, potential new farm bill. So we're frustrated too, but this is part of that solution process, right? Let's go through, share what we know with you, some things that can help you out. And then along the way too, right, this is a journey. So we want your feedback as well to help us make those things better. How can we simplify things? How can we, as we build new tools, right, how can we make them better? So we need your help. We need you to ask questions. We need you to give us the feedback that we need. So that's why we created this forum. So please take advantage of this. If it's not what you need, we want to know that too. We want these to be helpful and, time well spent, both for us and for you. So please provide that feedback. So with that, you got a great team here that's going to go through, as Christy said, some mapping things today. And I'm going to turn it over to Eric McTaggart to help us walk through next steps here. And Eric is currently our acting Conservation Planning Branch Chief. So Eric.
All right, thank you so much, Karen. Appreciate it. So like Karen said, I am the acting Conservation Planning Branch Chief. We fall underneath the Division of Conservation Planning and Area-Wide Division, which ultimately is underneath Karen and the Deputy of Programs. So within the Conservation Planning Branch, Christy touched on it with Conservation Desktop, but we're also involved with CART, keeping our databases up to date through CPDES. So we kind of cover the planning portion of all of our software. So I think one key point that Christy made was the comment she made of open to everyone. So this is not only for our agency folks, but also our partners. We work within NCPP and those partners that represent all those partner agencies, planners that we have working alongside of us. And sometimes it gets difficult to communicate broadly enough. So this is also a forum for them to join us. I'd like to thank all the presenters and those working behind the scenes to make this a reality. If anybody's helped develop training and try to pull it all together, it's a major lift, and they've done it in a short amount of time. Once this was pointed out that we needed to make this a reality, try to include additional communication. We all recognize how extremely busy everyone is, so it's easy to miss some small features that can help make our lives in the day-to-day operation, like maps, make that a little bit better. Again, like Christy said, this is not to replace state-specific guidance. So if there's things that you find that you have questions on, please reach out to your business tool specialists or other leads within your area or state to gain that clarification. Again, I'll echo what Karen said. Please give us great feedback in the chat Q&A sessions. As we are prioritizing our IT development, when we hear certain pain points rise to the top, obviously we're going to do some training like we're having here today, but it can also help guide what IT development we prioritize here in the near future, because we understand the magnitude of effort that you're under now, and we can easily see in the next 2 fiscal years how that is going to only grow upon you. So we really want to take advantage of this to provide you with the assistance that you need. So with that, thank you again for joining here in the last quarter, which is always a very busy quarter for everyone. So thanks for taking the time. And now I will turn it over to Jennifer Chin, who's going to kick off our first series on mapping features. So take it away, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Chen, and I'm with the Conservation Planning Branch, and I'm pleased to be here today. And I'll go ahead and kick off with a brief overview of some of the CD user and map layer interface options that are available, and how you can use that information to kind of speed up the work that you do within the system. So with that, I will go ahead and get started. Let's start with a brief overview of the CD map interface. We'll also quickly review some of the tools and options that are useful when working in maps and creating map products. So we can see information is already displayed here on our map. We have our imagery, and we also have information related to the case file and schedule already open. Our map extent is zoomed to the extent of our land units, and we see these red boundaries that correspond to practice polygons. We see a blue line that corresponds to a practice line, and a yellow point that corresponds to a practice point. This information again is displayed because we already are in the context of our case file and our schedule. Some of the menu options we have available within Conservation Desktop include our center toolbar options, as well as the right side menu options. Here in the center toolbar, we can navigate around in our map view. We can use the hand icon and pan around to different spots within our map. And we can select different zoom scales so that we can quickly zoom in and out on our imagery. You might wonder why this pull-down menu contains only these specified zoom scales. And the reason is speed and response time within the system. Because CD has these preset scales already saved or cached within the system, means that it doesn't have to redraw them on the fly. This allows the system to refresh faster as we hop from one scale to another. Although we have these specified zoom scales at this pull-down menu, we are actually able to set a custom zoom scale when we go to generate our plan map documents so that we can specify a scale that makes sense. We'll see that in a little bit. We can also manage what geospatial information that we see with a couple of tools on the center toolbar. We can use the filter icon to filter layers on or off, and we can use the map contents icon to quickly turn layers on and off. Again, you'll see more use of these tools here in a bit. In addition, the right toolbar has several things that are useful to us for generating maps as well. We have a labels toolbar, but we also have a map tools toolbar, and we're going to jump into that now. Here I can manage my layer preferences, and I can also quickly look at our different base map products. We'll start with layer preferences. Layer preferences allows you to determine which layers are available for you to use within CD, as well as which layers are visible by default. Here under by category is where I set which layers are available to me. You can see as I scroll down, there's various sections with a lot of different layers available. I would encourage you to go in and take a look at what's available in your own work area. But if I come down here to the other section, you can see that I have available to me my CLU, my active PLUs, as well as several other layers, including my practice points, lines, and polygons. Setting these as available allows me to have access to them through my map contents to quickly turn them on and off. By contrast, if I come over here to the Draw Order tab, this is where I can manage which layers are visible on my map by default. You can see here that my practice points, lines, and polygons are visible. It's really important to understand the difference of making a layer available versus making a layer visible by default. For the layers I make visible, the system is going to automatically draw those on the map every time I log in, every time I pan, every time I refresh, every time I zoom in and I zoom out. And as you can imagine, the more layers I have turned on as visible, the longer it takes for all of those refreshes to happen. So I always recommend when you're managing layer preferences, be inclusive about what layers you make available to you, but be exclusive about what layers you make visible by default. Layer preferences also includes a lot of good information. So you can see here, I've got a listing of layers, but I also have these little information icons. And if I click on an information icon, I can look at the layer's metadata, or data about the data. So for example, if I clicked on the USDA NAEP, I could see the age or vintage of the imagery. And then there's other specific information here as well. Again, this can be useful when you're trying to decide which imagery products to use, as well as which other layers you want to have available to you in your map interface. As I mentioned, once the layer preferences are established here, I can quickly turn on and off what layers I see on my map using map contents. Likewise, active PLUs are not visible by default. Again, if I had this visible by default, this would try to redraw every time and it would take significantly longer. However, because I've made active PLUs available in layer preferences, it's listed here and allows me to turn it on and off at will once I get to a zoom skill that I'm actually working in. Lastly, I want to visit base maps. Base maps are the background imagery products you have available to you. You can establish which ones are available and which is your default over in layer preferences. Here I have USDA NAEP as my default, but I might find that a different product helps specific features stand out on my map. Different imagery products are flown at different times, so they might help to show different vegetation changes. I also have a NAEP hillshade combination here. So if I switch over to the NAEP hillshade, not only do I see the imagery, but I also see the hillshade relief, which really allows some of those topographic features to shine through. So again, this was just a brief introduction to the types of products that are available within your map interface, giving you that flexibility to display the information that you want, as well as hopefully providing you some tips and tricks to keep in mind to manage these data and also manage the refresh and response time within Conservation Desktop. All right, and with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over now to Crystal Runge to guide us through map tools and draw tools.
Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Runge, and I serve as the GIS analyst on the Conservation Planning branch. I will be giving you a brief overview of the buttons on the map and draw toolbar. In this portion of the presentation, we are going to talk about the mapping tools and the draw tools. Map tools provide a way to control what is displayed on the map, working with geospatial data and navigating in the map view. To display the toolbar, just click on the click once at the top, and the map toolbar will appear. To hide the toolbar, just click it again. For this demo, we're going to be using the training site in the same customer that Jen previously showed throughout the training. The first tool button on the toolbar is the base maps, which is to select the base maps to be displayed. Jen went over this a little bit already in the previous demo. I will add that there are Puerto Rico, Pacific Basin, Hawaii, and Alaska imagery available under the base maps now. The second button is the layer preferences, where you can turn on and turn off your different layers. And Jen went over this in detail, so I'm going to move on to the next one. The next button is the bookmarks. Bookmarks can be created to save a viewing extent and easily return to the saved view. Bookmarks are saved with the case file, and a case file must be opened to use the feature. As you see in this demonstration, the bookmarks, we have tract 4965 and tract 647. So I can click on one and it'll zoom me to that tract, and then I can click on the other and it'll zoom me to that location. To make a bookmark, all you have to do is click on add, zoom to the area that you're wanting to create your bookmark first. So I'm going to find an area. And then I'm going to hit add bookmark. I'm going to give it a name and then hit enter. I'm going to zoom out to my other previous tract and then back to the test, show you that your bookmark has been saved. To delete a bookmark, you just have to click on the X on the right hand side to remove it. When you go to make a conservation plan map, you can use these bookmarks to navigate around, making switching maps extents and multiple maps easier. Jen will display this in a later demo. The next button is the measure tool. And the measure tool can be used to measure the perimeter of a polygon, length of a line, and to view coordinates for a point. Keep in mind, the measurements are made off of the projection of WGS 84. So I can go ahead and I can click and make a polygon, and it gives me the area in acres and the length in feet. If I want to change that, I can drop down here and change it to square miles, yards, square feet, vice versa. The next one is to click on for a line measurement, and I can measure a line. Same thing, same theory of changing the value here. And then you have your point. So if you need a latitude and longitude, you can get it in decimal degrees, or you can change it to degrees, minutes, seconds. The next button is the identify button. It allows you to view the attribute information for a selected feature in the active layer. So just make sure that when you're trying to identify that you're making this an active layer first by making it highlighted blue by clicking on it and then clicking the identify. So I'm going to go to the table of contents, and I'm going to select my CLU, highlight it, make it blue, and then I'm going to hit identify. And then it'll give me all the attributes for the CLU, plus it tells me that the CLU is the active layer. Now if I were to change it to say the PLSS layer, I can identify it's changed it to the PLSS, and now when I click on it, it gives me the attributes for that PLSS layer. The next button is the binoculars or the find tool, and it can be used to locate an area by tract, legal description, which is section, township, range, easement ID, street, address, or latitude and longitude. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say, I'm going to give it tract 623. And then I'm going to hit locate. And it's going to give me the location of tract 623. So then if I have a legal address, I can type that in and it'll give me that legal. So I want to go section 14, township 14 and 56 and hit locate. Oops. And it didn't find no results. But that's how you would use it. Easement, you can enter the easement ID and address. I can enter a street address, start entering a street address. And it'll give you idea options. So I'll select it, hit locate. It's already located it. And of course it puts it right where the address, right where your location is. I find, and of course you can do latitude and longitude. But I find this really handy to have all these different options, because sometimes you don't have the legal or tract, but you just want to go to a location quickly or an address and go find it quick with just the address. Okay, so I'm going to shut some of this stuff off so there's not so much stuff being viewed. This demo. Next is the land unit report. When I click the land unit report tool, it can be used to easily view all of the practice planned on a field. You can generate an Excel report of land unit information, practice information, and land use summary. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the land unit report. I have the land unit report here. I want to do all under here. I want to do all practice scheduled PLUs from a selection drop down and leave all the land units in the land units tree selected. Then I'm going to hit create report. Create land unit. The default is the land unit report. So I'm just going to leave that and I'm going to hit generate report. And it gives me an Excel document that I can open that has my land unit report. So I'm going to close it up. Now, because I'm going to do a land unit summary. So for land use summary, I just need to change the report type to land use summary. And I'm going to hit generate. And I'll open the land unit summary. So it gives me the land unit summary report, land use summary report. So the last one that is in the list here is your practice report. So I'm going to return to this land unit report tool. I'm going to go to the practice tab. And I'm going to say, and you could, if you're really interested in just looking at all of them that are planned or applied, you could choose the status. And then this one, we just have all that are all planned. But if you had other options, you could do a filter based off of that. So I'm going to go ahead and go up on my report type. I'm going to hit practice report. And then I'm going to go generate report. This gives me the practice report Excel document. And as you can see, these are all in Excel, so they can be saved on your computer desktop and be able to be used in other reports or however else you might want to use them. The next is the field inventory editor. The field inventory editor is used to document any concerns, problems, or existing practices that affect the use of management, sustainability, and soils, water, air, plant, and animal resources. The ability to create field inventory features is limited Only the states that selected this as a default in their preferences. So I'm going to go ahead and select layer preferences. And I'm going to go to the other category. And I'm going to make sure that the field inventory lines, field inventory points, and field inventory polygon are checked on, and they are on mine. And then I'm going to hit save. Okay, then I'm going to go here and go add new. And then I'm going to select the category. I'm going to say existing practice. And I'm going to do a water well. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, it's functioning. And then do my draw features appear. So I can use the point and I can put in a water well. And then when I open my existing practices, there is a water well added. So to import, you can also import a feature. So I'm going to go ahead and go to import. And I'm going to select, turn my CLU back on. I'm going to add new existing practice. And I'm going to call this a 512, which is a pasture hay. And I'm going to say yes, it's functioning. And I'm going to go import. And from the layer, I'm going to choose the CLU layer. And I'm going to choose select this field to import. So now I have my pasture hay planting and my water well are both in my field inventory, the field inventory. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. The next option is to change views, and the change view updates the map view to focus on the practice schedule or case PLU. If a practice schedule is not open, the change view will change to the case PLU layer symbology from geometry status, codes, planned, locked, and draft, etc. to a solid. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go ahead and turn off my CLU so you guys can see what's going on here. So now I have it's showing just my field boundaries, and now it's going to go to the planned and locked and draft status. The next one is the preview map, which updates the map practice layer to display the National Conservation Planning symbology set. In the preview, individual practice layers are removed from the map and the conservation practice layer is added. Display in the National Conservation Planning symbology set. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Preview, and it gives me the symbol set. Now if I go to my table of contents and scroll, you'll see the conservation practice layer appears and the symbol set appears, the legend appears. Now if I hit preview again, it goes back to the regular status, the plan status, and my conservation plan practice layer has disappeared. The legend is dynamic and will update as the map is panned and zoomed to display practices that are in your current extent only. An ID practice layer is turned off when the preview map button is selected. The layer will not display the conservation practices. And so that shows is all of your draw tool functionality. Or your map tools functionality, sorry. Yeah, next one that I was gonna show is the draw tools, and that provides the tools for dynamic graphics such as polygons, rectangles, circles, lines, and points on the map. You can select graphics, summarize and the selected graphics to view the total area or the length, and delete graphics. This can be used for exploring what-if scenarios. Graphics are not saved outside of the current session and are cleared when you log off and change current context, such as opening or closing a case file or the practice schedule. There's a little caveat to this that they do carry over if you do the conservation products and then download your Map to Art Pro. So to do your graphics, you just click on the little open draw tools and your graphics appear. So here's a polygon and I want to draw in a polygon and I can draw in this polygon area and the graphic appears. I can draw in a line. And I think you guys get the idea here, the point. I can also buffer the line. I can buffer either the graphic in the view or a line in the view, or I can select. So I'm going to go ahead and buffer it. I'm just going to give it, let's say 150 foot buffer. I'm going to go both sides of the line and I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. We need to select a feature. Okay. And so then it buffered that line. The buffer then becomes a graphic polygon. So now I go here and I select so I can, the next button is the select all button. So you can select all of the options or you can unselect them all. You can also select one at a time here too. But if I select all, then I can get the summary of them all. So I'm getting a summary of the line. The length of the line is 13,000 feet, and the polygons, which is it's counting 2. Like I said, the buffer is now a graphic, and so it's adding these 2 polygons together. And then of course you have your delete option to be able to delete the graphics. Again, these do get saved if you go through conservation products and use the download to Arc Pro. That ends this demonstration of the map tools and the draw tools. I hope you found a little bit of tidbit of information that will become very useful to you in your mapping of your conservation plan. And now I will turn it back over to Christy for a Q&A.
All right. Well, thank you both for your videos. We do have some questions, and thank you those that are submitting questions. We are recording this, so I know we've had several people ask about that. So this is being recorded and will be shared out after we're done today. So I have 2 questions for Jennifer Chen. So the first one is there a way to manually set or enter our desired value for the scale or spatial extent? For example, can I just manually enter a value like 1 to 28,000? So that's the question.
Thank you, Christy. Appreciate the question and to whomever submitted it as well. So yes, there is a way to manually set a scale. However, it's in the conservation products workflow when we actually go to generate our map. So we'll show that here in a little bit. The preset scales that I showed are when you're kind of in edit mode, but when you go to generate that plan map itself, you'll have the ability to type in a custom scale that makes sense.
Awesome. All right. So the second question is, why do I only have one base map option?
Fair enough. So if you have only one base map option showing up in your interface, I would encourage you to go to layer preferences. And if you go to that by category section, which is where you manage availability, there is a section of base map products. So you can, again, turn on multiple base map options as being available, and then you'll be able to see them and toggle between them like I did in my video.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. We do have questions. There's 3 questions for Crystal, and we got a lot of questions that we're not going to be able to answer them all live. So we will answer those and send those out after we're done. So the first question for Crystal. I'm going to switch it over to Crystal. So I'm going to ask her now, what layer do you have on that shows all the tracked and field labels?
The layer that it was was used was the CLU, and this when you turn on the CLU, it has those labels already set.
Awesome, thank you. Second question, Crystal, is how do we find the date and other information for base map imagery?
So under layer preferences, in the base map category, you can click on a little there's a little I button, and it'll give you the metadata for that layer or that base map.
All right, and the last question we have time for is number 3. How do we get the legal description to show up on the map layer?
Okay, the legal description for the demo showed up because I used the PLSS layer that the national published. If your state configured a layer, then you would have to have the labels already part of your configuration.
All right, well, thank you very much to both of you for answering those questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jennifer Chen to go through our next videos.
All right, much appreciated, Christy. We're going to take a look now at labels and annotations. Labels and annotations are 2 different ways you can include additional information on your maps. Labels can be used to display information related to data attributes that are already populated or saved somewhere in CD. These are things like field numbers and acres or practice extents, practice names, plan dates. But you might also want to include other information on your maps, information that isn't saved somewhere in CD. These would be things like potentially additional details related to the practice, access points to a property, or anything else that you can think of that might be relevant for the client to be displayed on the map. This is where annotations can be used. Let's take a look at both in a bit more detail. If I come over to my rightmost menu, I can click on the Label Tools tool, and I can access both labels and annotations from here. If we take a look at labels first, I can see here on this Create Map Labels window that I'm able to set up or create the labels and how I want them to look on the map. Let's go ahead and select the Practice Schedule PLUs layer or the Fields layer. If I select Practice Schedule PLUs, you can see that information populates down here below. This is because I've already saved and set up this information, and you can see it on my map. For Practice Schedule PLUs, I'm including the track number, the PLU or field number, the land use, and the program acres. I've also populated an additional text that I want to have displayed before each of these criteria, and then units where applicable. As I'm constructing this label, I can see a preview of what it's going to look like here in this middle section of the screen. If I want to adjust anything, I can of course adjust the attributes that I'm using to display. I can also adjust the type of label as well as the font, color, size, etc. And all of that information would be previewed here in the middle. Once I've established the look and feel that I want for my labels, I can hit Save Preferences. So once I set this once and I hit Save Preferences, I can come into any case file and schedule, select the Practice Schedule PLUs, and hit Load Saved Preferences, and all of this information would populate for me by default. Not only that, but I can set different criteria for different label types. So for example, if I select instead the Practice Points layer, as in my watering facility down here below, I see different criteria populated. Again, these are things that I established before this video. But I wanted to display the practice name, the planned amount, and the planned date. I have a call out type of label as noted up here, black text with kind of a vanilla background. Again, this is all information I can set once, hit Save Preferences, and then call back at any time in any case file and schedule utilizing the Load Save Preferences option. Now let's take a look at what this looks like in a little bit more detail on the map itself. I'm going to use my Map Tools bookmark to quickly hop to the southernmost tract in my schedule, tract 647. So once I've zoomed in here, you can see that the labels scale out a little bit better and correspond to the fields as well as the practice extents that I have planned in the schedule. But I can see here my leader line is a little bit off. My watering facility is here, my pipeline is here, but I really want to point this label to point over here to the watering facility or my point practice. I can make these minor edits by just clicking on the label itself and either moving the label and or moving the leader line to point to the proper location. This also helps if there are significant features on the map that you don't want to be obscured by a particular label. So again, in this example, I've created labels for both my land units as well as my practice extents. Now let's take a look at annotations. Again, annotations are that option that we have in the system to add additional information, things that aren't saved in Conservation Desktop. I access annotations through the same Label Tools toolbar. I can create a quick text annotation here just by clicking this eye icon and clicking on the map. And again, in this example, I want to include some additional information about my practices that isn't already contained in Conservation Desktop. For example, we are planning 1.5-inch polyethylene pipe and a 450-gallon concrete stock tank. I can adjust the font, colors, etc. here. And once I have this information the way that I want, I can go ahead and click apply. So you can see here that I have this additional text pop up. If I misspelled something or I needed to add additional clarifying information, I could click the pencil icon and make my adjustments here. So we have the ability to really display a lot of information on our maps. Sometimes we want to include all of this, sometimes we don't. Fortunately, we can manage what we display. You see here on this toolbar, this case annotation. Case annotation is where we control whether or not our annotations display on the map. In this instance, I quickly created an annotation and added it here. But if I wanted to temporarily turn this off, say to generate a map that doesn't pertain to my pipeline or my tank, I can quickly uncheck that. But then when I need to come back in and create a plan map that does outline my practices information, I can turn it back on again. If I have additional items that I wanted to display and manage separately, I can add additional annotation layers. So for example, if I click new layer and I have an option here for new annotation layer, I can select or create a name for a certain category of annotations that I want to capture. So in this example, I'll use access points. So now, if I make this my active annotation, no longer do you see case annotation, but you see that custom annotation layer that I created here. Now, if I come back to my eye icon, I can create a separate annotation here. And in this example, I'm going to do a line call out and note the access point. I'll have a little fun with this one. And I can go ahead and hit apply. Okay, so I can see that there, it's a little bit small. So I'm going to go ahead and bold and increase my font and hit apply again. So you can see here that I have a separate annotation set up for my access points versus some of the details I have displayed for my practices. Again, I can manage these separately and make sure they are both visible, one is visible, or the other is visible, depending on my need. But the nice thing is I can click those on and off without having to physically delete them and add them each time. Again, using both labels and annotations really helps planners to make use of the data that's already saved in Conservation Desktop through the use of labels, but then also gives the planner the ability to customize and share additional information to really create a map product that's useful, shares the information that needs to be displayed on the map for our clients' use. All right, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Crystal Runge now to guide us through importing land units or practices.
Thank you, Jennifer. In this next demo, I will be giving an overview of the export and import functionality. I will be exporting a practice from CD and importing a point from a configured file and a polygon from a shapefile. So the next features that we're going to go over are exporting land units and importing land units. So we're going to export a land unit or a practice to a shapefile, and the planner may need to export a feature from Conservation Desktop to be able to use in Art Pro. The export tool allows the planner to select just the features needed to export them to a shapefile that can be downloaded to their local machine. The shapefile is packaged into a WinZip. So under the map contents, we want to make sure that we have highlighted either the practice schedule PLU or a practice polygon. So we're going to practice schedule PLU, and then we're going to select the field that we want. If we want to do more than one, you just do a box, drag a box, and then select the ones you want. And then you're going to right click and export selected feature. You could change the shapefile name here if you would like, and then hit export. Once it's exported, it'll say shapefile is ready for download. Click on the download shapefile, and then you can save the shapefile to any location that you on your local computer. That's how you export a land unit or practice to a shapefile. So now we're going to import a land unit or a practice. We're going to do it a couple different ways. Generally, you would have a shapefile, or another instance that I'm going to demonstrate is if you have a GPS points and you're using field maps and your GIS specialist has configured that layer, you can be able to pull that layer in and get your import the points from that. So first, we're going to go to the GPS points that have been configured by your GIS specialist for field maps. So for this demo, I have done GPS points called the GPS demo, and I have added those here using my layer preferences in the location that it has been configured to in that under layer preferences. So I have GPS points demo. I'm going to zoom to that so you can see it better. And see, I have 4 different points. So what I can do is I can come in here and I can create an edit practice. And I know that this is in this 4, 6, I could do right click and hit create practice. And I can select, I can say, I want this to be a well, water well. And I get that. I could select, oops, select my point by importing, and I can choose GPS point demo, select my point, I have one selected, hit OK. And that would brings my well, water and well in here as a practice, so I can save that. So again, this is if you have a configured layer from your GIS specialist that you can add into your map contents through your layer preferences. Now say that you were in ArcPro and you drew out a shapefile of some sort, and you wanted to add that shapefile practice into your map or into your practice kit as a practice. So what you do is you would come up to your map products, you would add that layer. So remember, you have to zip it. So I have a tree establishment zip file. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to open it. I already have it in here from earlier. So I would select it and import the layer. It would become available over here in your tree view. And so I have my tree establishment. So I will zoom to that. So I now have my shape file in here. Just key is it has to be a zip file to bring it in. And as you can tell from here, you can have a zip file, a GPX, or a JSON file. Was generally said, and they all have, and the shape file has to be a zip file. So I have this tree establishment here, and then I do exactly the same thing I did with the points. And just come in here, create, find my location, attract, and create practice. I'm gonna go tree and shrub establishment, and then I'm gonna hit import, and then I'm gonna find the feature that I had in here. So it's tree establishment, and I'm gonna select it, hit OK. So now I have this as a tree establishment. So if I come over here, oops, sorry. Go to my map contents and I shut it off. It's now officially part of it. So then I can hit save and close. And it's saving the practices. And so now I'm going to shut off the demo points. Yes, points. So now we have our well and our tree establishment as part of the practice. Part of our practices. Just polygon, practice point. So that's how do you utilize the export and import, especially when it comes to GPS points in the field or any kind of changes that you need to make to a shapefile that you might have digitized outside the CD.
All right, Mary's gonna do our next Q&A.
Thank you, Crystal. I will follow up with a couple questions for Jennifer. Jennifer, Your first question, can you clearly tell people where's a good place that they can find the lesson plans? I think we have a few people who might be new to doing some of these maps and they've not seen or don't know where to find these items. So can you help them out if you don't mind?
Of course, appreciate it, Mary, and good question. Yes, all this information and much, much more is contained within our lesson plans. Those are available for our on our CD SharePoint site, and all users. Mary, can you go ahead and mute, please? Thank you. All of our folks should be able to access that CD SharePoint site. However, if there are partner folks that have joined us that are not able to access that, you might want to work with some of your contacts within your state to get that information. So again, CD SharePoint site would be probably the best place to go looking for that.
Sorry about that, Jennifer. I will forget we are in the same room. Your next question, Jennifer. Is there a resolution to getting leaders line to show up on a final map product for the labels? They seem to disappear when this user try making the maps.
Excellent question. Again, this has been an issue, had been an issue for quite some time. However, it should be resolved. So we should be able to see that information on our map products. So again, if you're continuing to not see that, certainly let your support staff know, but we should have success in utilizing those within the system now.
Thank you, Jennifer. And let's keep on our timeline. I know we sent a couple more questions in for Jennifer, but we're going to try to put those in our question and answers when we send them back out. So I'm going to move on with a couple questions for Crystal. Crystal, your first one, does CD keep the annotations after you close the case files?
It does keep it under your annotation, that the annotation button.
And I guess the next one, can I export more than one type of feature at one time?
Good question, Mary. No, you cannot, because the features, the geometry is, if it's not the same geometry and not coming from the same layer, it would not be able to be exported to that. You have to keep with, if you're going to export a line, you got to keep it with all lines, etc.
Thank you, Crystal. And I know we had several database questions, and we'll follow up with those because I think we only had a couple minutes and I don't want to take any more time. So I'm going to turn it back over to Jennifer for us to move on to the next video. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Well, we're winding down, but our next video, we're going to bring some of this together and walk through the process of creating plan maps using some of these tools. Now we're going to bring together the tools and data we've discussed and show how they can be used to quickly create informative maps. I'm going to jump to the first tract I want to create a plan map for using the bookmarks we set up previously. Let's start with the southernmost tract, tract 647. Now we'll go ahead and start the conservation products workflow, which is where we go to generate maps. We'll select the category and type of document we want to create and select Next. Note as we navigate through this workflow, the system prompts us with the step we are at in the process by highlighting the chevron. Here we are at the map heading section. As with other places within Conservation Desktop, if I've set up preferences for how I like things to typically display, I can quickly call on that information by selecting Load Saved Preferences. You can see here, a series of header options have selected based on the preferences I had established. Note the district, service center, state and county information is also pre-populated, but it's going to pull that information in based on the case file and schedule that I have open. So I move next, we're at the layout and scale section of the workflow. And I'll just point out here that as we go through the conservation products workflow, not only do we have the ability to set the document preferences up at the top, but throughout we have access to our map interface below. And this is an interactive interface, meaning we can update things on this map interface to make sure that we can adjust the way we need to for the best map product. You can see here, my practice symbols have changed. No longer do I see the practice points and lines and polygons layers, but I have a more robust conservation practices layer. If I come to map contents, I can see that here. In this view, all of my practice types are bundled together. I've got my practice points, my pipeline for my practice lines, and then the polygons. We can see on the screen here that several of our practice polygons are whole field, which makes it difficult to see not only the imagery below, but also the point and line practices we have scheduled. So we're going to manage this information by filtering these data or these symbols off of our map, utilizing our filter icon. If I select my filter tool, I can scroll on the right side of my screen and deselect those whole field practices we have scheduled. Then I can hit apply and confirm that I've made the adjustments that I want to make. Note too, if I need to, I can also access my label tools, make slight adjustments in how the labels appear. And then I can also access my map contents. There are a couple additional layers that I want to turn on, including my roads or my world transportation and my hydrography. I can also adjust the type of base map I'm using. It really makes those practices pop on screen. Our orange boundary here is our paper space. That's displaying to us what information is going to be actually presented on the paper document or the final PDF document that we create. So we can adjust that as well. So I scroll back up here to the layout and scale options. I could set the paper size, but I'm going to leave it as 8.5 by 11 portrait. But here I can adjust the map scale. And if you remember previously, we talked about how in the map interface, we have these preset scales that we're kind of confined to for speed and responsiveness reasons. Up here at the top, however, is where we can adjust and create a custom scale. So let's say I want to type in 1 inch to 500 feet. As I do that, you can see my paper space has adjusted down below. It's zoomed in quite significantly. So much so, in fact, that I want to bump it out just a little bit, just to give me a little bit more space. And again, you can play around with the scales to make sure that you're getting all the information you want on the screen and that it's oriented appropriately. So I scroll down, I'm going to use my pan tool, my hand, and just kind of tuck the track down here in the lower left. I see I've got my intersecting roads to help locate me. And I think I've adjusted the map to the extent that I want. So I think I'm good here. So I'll go ahead and click next. This last step allows you to select and add an optional practices table to your map. Why would you want to do this? Well, if I come over here and select view by practice name, what the system is showing me are all those acreage-based practices that are scheduled on these fields. And if you remember, we turned off a number of these so that we could see the imagery in our tank and pipeline practices. So I can come back up here in those whole field practices that I deselected or used my filter tool to deactivate. I can select here on this optional practices table and display them in a succinct way at the top of my map product. So let's go ahead and create our map. All right, so now we see our conservation plan map document is processing. And this can be a source of frustration because it does take a few seconds for this to process and complete. And that's because the system is taking all that geospatial information and pulling it together into a succinct PDF map. Nice thing is, because we have this interactive map view available to us, we can scroll right on down and keep going to generate the next map. Let's do that now. I'm going to use my bookmark, and I'm going to go to the northernmost tract. All right, so this was the other tract in our plan. You see here that we've got different practices and different fields displayed. So let's go ahead and update our system to reflect the information that we want to reflect here. For one, we still have our filter set from our previous tract. So let's go ahead and update that accordingly. We're going to clear out the older filters. And we see that we have, again, a conservation practices layer. And in this time, we have our conservation crop rotation, and then we have our cover crop as well. Do we want to turn off all of these practices on our filter? My answer would be no. In this example, we have conservation crop rotation on both of these fields that extends the full extent of both of these fields. So therefore, I can turn off conservation crop rotation because I know that those are full extent practices. My cover crop, although it's an acreage-based practice, only covers a portion of my field. I see here we've planted 66.6 acres of cover crop on our 132 acre field. So it's important to me to display where on this field the cover crops are planted. So in this example, I'm only going to turn off the 328 conservation crop rotation practice, and I'm going to leave the cover crop displayed. So I can see where that practice is going to be installed. However, you might not like that you can't see the imagery at all. You can adjust this by coming to the map contents, going to that conservation practices layer, and adjusting the opacity. I'm going to adjust it down from fully opaque, or 100%, down to roughly 50 or 60, so that I can see some of the features below. Before we're ready to generate the map product for this tract, I have some other adjustments I want to make. So I'm going to come back, and I'm going to come back to my layout and my scale. This tract tends to lay more east and west in nature than north and south. So I'm going to use a page size, same size, but I'm going to use the landscape orientation. And you can see my paper space is adjusted accordingly. However, I don't quite have all of my field on my map, so I want to adjust that out as well. Let's go ahead and adjust our map scale to say 1 inch equals 1,000 feet. Now we've zoomed out a little bit. We've got some crossroads there. We can pick up some of the area around our tract, and we fully have our fields in the map paper space. Nestle that down a little bit more to the lower left. Again, I can come back and hit next. Back to my optional practices table. Again, we selected off using the filter icon those whole field practices for 328 conservation crop rotation. So I'm going to utilize that optional practices table to display it at the top of my map. And we'll go ahead and hit create. Name my product. And we'll go ahead and hit create. Now you see we have 2 products up in our queue. We have the most recent map that we're still processing, but our first plan map for tract 647 is complete. Let's take a look at it using the preview. So here we can see the final product. We see the map header information that we've displayed. We see that optional practices table displaying those whole field practices that correspond to these fields. We also see the pipeline and water tank. We see our labels calling out those practices as well as our field boundaries, or excuse me, our field labels. And then down below, we see a scale bar that represents our custom scale that we've entered, as well as a legend denoting what these conservation practice points and lines correspond to. And lastly, our practice schedule PLUs. I'm going to go ahead and close out of this preview. And at this time, again, if you needed to continue to generate maps, we could hop back in and out, adjusting our labels and our layers. We could turn off our practices and turn on things like soils to create soils maps. So again, the benefit of having not only the map view visible while you're generating these products, but having it interactive really allows for a lot of flexibility to bounce back and forth between making multiple maps at once. And it might seem daunting just to see it at first, but as you generate multiple maps over time, you'll get a lot more comfortable in bouncing back and forth between the different portions of the interface. All right, as we come back up here, we can see that our second product is completed. We'll take a look at this one as well. Again, same information displayed, that cover crop practice, showing some of the features below, but also pointing out that cover crop symbology here on the map, as well as in the legend. So I hope this has been helpful to kind of document some of the tips and tricks you can use as you generate map products, as well as the functionality within CD to be able to continue to generate additional map products while the system processes and generates those final documents. Just a quick note, multiple options exist not only to preview, but to download the product, upload to DMS, and export these to an ArcType project for additional work if needed. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Christy McKinley to close this out. Thanks, Christy.
Thank you, Jennifer. Boy, we've had a lot of questions, so we'll get to as many as we can here in just a second. So the first one is going to go to Crystal. There was a lot of questions we weren't able to cover on the last set of videos. So this one's for Crystal. Is the ability to add outside layers, GPS points, and shape files like Crystal showed designated state by state?
That's a good question. I'm gonna take a stab at this one with the state by state thing. If your state, what I showed was a state configured layer, but you can add any layers to your project to export or import using that plus button. It just has to be a zipped shapefile or a GPX file. If you have a GPS points, you can use a GPX file.
All right, thank you for that. The next questions are going to Jennifer Chen. So the first one is, what options for paper size are available to print?
Fair question. Yep. So when you're generating those conservation products and you're selecting a paper, you've got a number of options there. You do have some options for some larger scale papers, assuming you've got the printer and the paper to do it. You've got some options for ANSI C, D, or E. So like a 17 by 22 inch portrait landscape options, 22 by 34 portrait landscape options, and even up to 34 by 44, both portrait and landscape orientation.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Next question is, why did you check off the geospatial PDF option as you were going through your video?
Fair question, and this is the impatient me coming through. Geospatial PDFs work. They actually provide a kind of a nifty PDF option that allows you to interact with the layers on the document itself. However, it takes a little bit longer in my mind to kind of process that portion out. So unless I'm going to use the product itself and share it with somebody who's going to utilize it, I will disable that option and just create a a regular old PDF as my product output.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And the last question I had is there a way to make practices more bold where they show up better, such as a fence and pipeline sometimes barely show? So do you have any suggestions for that?
Sure. Yep. Short-term suggestion and a longer-term one. So, short-term suggestion is we are limited. We don't have that functionality to bold those practices out just yet. We can really just kind of manage the opacity and establish labels. I would encourage you to play around with the imagery products, as I was showing on my videos. Really, some of those different products allow the information on the map to really pop more than others. So I'd encourage you to utilize that. And then I know that there are enhancements underway to allow for users to have some more customization on those symbols, including the ability to export this information out to do some more custom work. So again, short-term answer and a longer-term answer on the way.
All right, thank you. We do have a little bit of extra time, so I just may want to just kind of throw some questions out, and I guess Crystal and Jennifer, you all can let me know who wants to answer maybe a few of these that we didn't have a chance really to look at. One is on opacity. So is it correct that you can only change the opacity in the conservation plan map process? And that one may be more for Jennifer, so if you want to answer that one.
Sure thing, Christy. So no, actually, you can adjust the opacity of that layer either in your edit map view mode while you're working and editing in CD, or once you bounce over into conservation products and start to generate that map. So again, you've got that map interface at the bottom of the screen, even as you're generating the product, and it's interactive as we showed. So if you find that when you're in that product and you need to adjust that opacity, you have access to those tools there.
All right, thank you for that. One of the questions is about requiring a farm number along with the track number on the plan maps. That's a state requirement. Like we said, we want you to follow your state guidance. We are looking at some enhancements to bring in the farm number as well as some other data from FSA. So that is one of the things that we do have as a future enhancement to help out with your labeling as well as knowing where those farms are located. All right, so let's see. Can labels be imported to, or can labels be added to imported features is another question that's in the chat.
Crystal, you want to tag that one?
Sure. I believe you can add labels to that on the label feature as long as it's a shapefile that's available. You can label the feature.
All right, thank you for that. And then how did you get the road labels to show up on your map? That one's probably for Jennifer.
Fair. So if you've got the transportation layer available within your map contents, and again, you're back in the conservation products workflow and scrolling down to that interactive map interface, you can adjust the map contents and click on and off layers in that process just as you can when you're editing. There currently is a bug in the system where if you have the roads layer or several layers, but roads as an example, if you have that turned on when you're editing in the map interface, then you launch over into conservation products and start going through that workflow, it disables or deactivates those layers. And I believe that's another functionality that's being worked on. But what I did in my demo was I just simply came back down to the map interface within the conservation products workflow and clicked those layers back on so they show up on my map.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. And then there's another question as far as can you make multiple maps at the same time, and does that slow the process down if we need to create multiple maps?
Yes, you can create multiple maps. And as I showed, kind of working through that workflow, hitting create, naming the file, and letting the processing wheel spin up at the top. And then you can either bounce back down to the bottom of that screen within the conservation products workflow, interact with the map there, or even close out of conservation products, going back into your main editor window. And that first product you created is still going to be spinning and processing. So yes, you can continue to work, and no, there's no significant difference in whether or not and how fast that product is going to generate either way.
All right, thank you. And then we did have a few questions on the table, so you can include a practice table in your plan map. So the questions I'm seeing is there a way to view that table before you create your plan map? So you don't want it to cover up, your map. So any suggestions on that?
Not yet is the answer. That is another item that is in the queue of enhancements or benefits to include within the system. So right now you don't have that preview option for that practices table. It is going to deposit it in the upper right corner of the map. So if you noticed as I was going through my video and I kind of scooted my track down a little bit to the lower left, that was purposeful, knowing that my conservation practices table was going to be showing up in that upper right. So there's a little bit of back and forth if you are working on a number of practices, but just keep in mind that the number of practices that you include in that table is going to impact how long it is. And again, we are looking at building in some enhancements to give you a preview option, potentially even be able to allow you to move that to different portions of the map based on what you're displaying on your product. But it's not here yet.
All right, well, thank you. I think we're ready to kind of move over to our closing comments. So thank you to all the speakers and thank you for participating with us today. Just to kind of give you a little background, we put this together, like Eric said, in the last couple of months. And so I just want to thank those that spent the time to help us put this together for the bigger audience. We did have a question on how many people were here, and it was roughly the most I saw was around 2,100 people attended today. We had no idea if it'd just be us talking to ourselves. So thank you for joining. We do have more coming. And so we hope this has been informative for you. If you're interested in learning more, reach out to your state business tool coordinator or your specialist, because there's a lot more detailed information available that outlines what we quickly demonstrated here. Are there other things you want to learn more about? Please submit those ideas for future forum topics. We will be sending out an email that has a feedback form and asking you for what additional topics you would like to see us present in the future. And with that, thank you for joining today, and thank you to the sponsors of this effort. And that's all we have. And thanks for joining. Bye-bye, everybody.